Hey there, and welcome. If you're an educator or a school leader, you know the feeling. The world of education is just buzzing with new ideas, right? But sometimes all that buzz can start to feel, well, like a whole lot of noise. Today, we're going to cut right through that noise and look at a really powerful way to bring some clarity and focus back into our schools. So, does this feel familiar at all? You've just wrapped your head around one big school initiative, and then bam, three more pop up out of nowhere. It's this constant challenge a lot of educators call initiative overload. It really feels like you're trying to juggle a dozen different priorities at once, and honestly, it can be completely overwhelming. I mean, just look at this. You've got universal design for learning, social emotional learning, culturally responsive education, AI literacy. The list just goes on and on. Now, each one of these is valuable for sure, but when they're all thrown at you as separate, competing things to do, teachers and students are just left feeling scattered and confused. So the big question is, how do we make all of these things work together? So, what's the fix? Well, instead of this messy pile of initiatives, what we really need is a single, coherent system. We need a structure where new ideas don't compete with old ones, but actually make them stronger. The key idea here is something called strategic coherence. The best way to think about it is like a central planning spine for your school or district. It's this foundational structure that connects all those different initiatives we talked about, UDL, SEL, AI, you name it, into one single, unified system where every single piece actually reinforces the others. So how do we actually build a system like this? Well, the framework we're going to explore today is built on 5 distinct pillars. Each one tackles a critical piece of the puzzle, and when you put them together, they create this really powerful engine for meaningful learning. Okay, let's dive in and break them down one by one. All right, so the first pillar is the big idea we just introduced, strategic coherence itself. You can think of it as the master blueprint. Its whole purpose is to connect the big picture goals that a district sets directly to the daily work that's happening in the classroom. This makes sure everyone is pulling in the same direction. And this is where it gets really practical. When you have coherence, that feeling of overload we talked about, it actually starts to fade away. Teachers can finally see how these different frameworks support each other instead of competing. That creates consistency from one classroom to the next, which is just huge for students. It's used for big picture strategic planning and even helps schools make smarter choices about new curriculum. Let's move on to pillar 2, because this is where it starts to get really interesting. This one is called dual audience design. The idea is so simple, but it's kind of revolutionary. You create parallel planning tools. One version is for teachers and another is for students. They share the same core language and structure, just adapted for who's using it. So why does this matter so much? Well, it immediately closes that gap between teacher training and what actually happens in the classroom. A teacher can learn a new planning technique in a professional development session, and literally the next day, they can use a student-facing version of that exact same tool with their class. And you can see how this gives a massive boost to student agency. Students are using the same kind of goal setting and reflection tools as their teachers. It's brilliant. Okay, pillar number 3 is system architecture. So if strategic coherence is the blueprint, then the architecture is like the school's operating system or its super organized digital library. It's a modular system, which means it's flexible, and it provides one clear, reliable place to find everything. No more digging through 1,000 different shared drives. And the benefit here is just clarity, pure and simple. A new leader can get up to speed so much faster because there's a clear map of how everything works. When the district rolls out a new tool, everyone knows exactly where it fits in the larger system. It just cuts down on confusion and makes sure things are done consistently and built to last. Now for our 4th pillar, and honestly, this one is absolutely vital, the equity and authenticity lens. This pillar makes sure that equity isn't just a checkbox you tick off or something you think about at the end. It's woven into the very fabric of the planning process, from the very first idea for a lesson all the way to the final student project. This slide just shows that shift so perfectly. The old way was often to create a lesson and then ask, okay, how can we make this equitable? This new way demands that we start by asking, how can we design this from the ground up to be equitable, relevant, and authentic for every single learner? It's a huge change from being reactive to being proactive. And our 5th and final pillar brings us right to the cutting edge, an AI-enhanced workflow. Now, this part is really important. Within this framework, AI is not meant to replace teachers. No way. Instead, it's carefully positioned as a thinking partner, a tool to help both educators and students brainstorm, reflect, and make their work better. Let's just be super clear about the role of AI here, because there's a lot of fear and confusion out there. The myth is that AI is coming for teachers' jobs. The reality, in a well-designed system like this one, is that AI is more like a powerful assistant. It can help scaffold projects for students or give a teacher some quick feedback on a lesson plan. It saves time while keeping the human expert, the teacher, firmly in control.
Okay, so we've seen the 5 pillars individually. Now for the magic. Let's see how they all lock together to create a system that's so much more powerful than just the sum of its parts.
Think of it like this. Strategic coherence is the strong spine that holds everything upright. The dual audience design is the bridge that connects teacher learning directly to student learning. The system architecture is the clear blueprint that everyone follows. The equity lens is the moral compass guiding every single decision. And finally, the AI workflow is the accelerator, making the whole process smarter and faster. See? Each part really needs the others to work at its best. So when you have a system like this, it does more than just get you organized. It actually opens up a whole new vision for what a school can be. Let's talk about the payoff. Ultimately, it really boils down to 3 huge benefits. For educators, it means less overload and a much greater sense of purpose. For students, it leads to greater equity because their needs are at the absolute center of the design. And for everyone, it results in more meaningful learning, where the work feels authentic, connected, and truly engaging. And look, if you take only one thing away today, let it be this. The entire goal is to make this simple but profound shift, to move away from a culture of competing initiatives and toward a culture of reinforcing frameworks where everything just works in harmony. So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. Imagine your school or your district. Think about all the energy, all the talent, all the good intentions that are already there. What would be possible? What could you achieve if the greatest strength of your entire organization was its coherence? Thanks so much for joining me.